It's a strange old world of EVs. You never really know if you've done the right thing until you've done it.
The Nissan Leaf has been one of the most influential electric vehicles in automotive history, serving as a pioneer for the mass-market EV space since its launch in 2010. With over 650,000 units sold globally, it was one of the world's best-selling EVs for several years and played a major role in normalising electric cars for everyday drivers. While it faced criticism for limited range and battery degradation in earlier models, it still contributed significantly to reducing emissions and paved the way for Nissan's next electric model, the Ariya. Entering into a much busier market, the Ariya didn't quite hit the mark in the same way as the Leaf. Maybe it's time for Nissan to breathe new life into some of their combustion cars that serve very much as household names.
And this is the first one. This is the Nissan Micra EV. This is the 6th generation Nissan Micra, now fully electric. And if you're thinking it looks a bit familiar, yeah, you'd be right, because it does share a lot, almost everything, apart from the exterior design details, with the Renault 5. But that's no bad thing. Why not pick a car which has been so successful and then build upon that? But Nissan are saying that they're going for a different audience with the Nissan Micra. So have they done that? Well, that's what we're going to find out in today's video. Hi guys, I'm Tish and welcome back to Auto Social UK. In today's video, I'm going to tell you everything about the Nissan Micra EV. So if that sounds good, then please keep watching. And if you like new car reviews and car content, then go ahead and hit the subscribe button. So why don't we start by reeling off all the facts and figures when it comes to all the electric bits of the new Nissan Micra EV.
It offers two different battery options, a 40 kilowatt-hour version with 192 miles and a 52 kilowatt-hour version with a claimed 253 miles. Now, on paper, that puts it roughly on par with the Peugeot E208, which has 248 miles, and ahead of the Fiat 500e with 199 miles. The Micra rides on the AMPR small EV platform, shared with the Renault 5, meaning its weight is fairly low for a modern EV. With independent rear suspension and low-mounted battery, handling should be agile.
Nissan themselves have said that they focused mainly on the exterior details in standing it apart from the Renault 5. So what are those? Well, of course, most obviously, the lights. So you have these round, friendly headlamps on this new Nissan Micra, and it does give it a really approachable feel. That's exactly what they were going for. But clever design details are these little tweaks here of this black part of the lights. You see, if you go for a dark colour, the dark blue or the black, it gives it a friendlier look. You can kind of mainly see the round outline of the lights. But go for something a bit more contrasting, like on this blue, and then it almost gives it a slightly meaner look. I'm not really sure this Micra could ever look mean.
But personality is further accentuated with a wink lighting signature when you unlock and lock the car.
Other little design tweaks that I really like. One is situated on this charger. So if I open up this charger, on here you'll just see 2 vertical lines and 3 horizontal. So what this actually stands for is the Japanese numbers. So 2 is Ni and 3 is San, which is a really lovely little design detail.
Whilst we have it open, charging is limited to 80 kilowatts on the smaller battery and up to 100 kilowatts DC on the larger battery pack. 15 to 80% charging will take around 30 minutes, which is competitive but not class-leading. Still, the inclusion of battery thermal management or a heat pump and vehicle-to-load functionality is a plus, giving it a bit more versatility for lifestyle use.
Other things is the ice cream scoop. So you have this scoop which runs all the way from this little winged eyeliner all the way to the back of the car. I really like it. It gives it an aerodynamic look. You still have that boxy sportiness, but it kind of just gives it a little sleek design detail. There's quite a few different colours to choose from, and you also can change the roof colours too. So there's black roof options, colour roof options, but also you can get silver. I'd really like to see this in silver. I think it would work really well, especially if you go for one of the specifications which gets those chrome details. For instance, around this window here, that would work really well with a silver roof. Now let's talk about alloy wheels. Every version of the Nissan Micra EV gets 18-inch wheels, regardless of the specification. Go for the entry-level trim and they're actual steel wheels with hubcaps on top. but you'd never know. They really look very well designed. In your middle spec option, you can choose between either having those steel wheels or having an alloy wheel design, and then on the top spec, they're only available with alloy wheels, but all versions actually look very, very nice. And as well as that ice cream scoop that goes down the side of the car, there's a few other tweaks. They've used a lot of gloss black. Now, Nissan say that they're doing this to give it a premium touch, but also they've used this panel at the bottom, and despite it having the same ground clearance as the Renault 5, it's to give it a slightly lifted look compared to that car. And actually, I think that works quite well. It also looks great contrasting with this blue paint colour. And similar to that, they've also done a clever design tweak with the rear as well. So you have this swooping dark design at the top, and that gives it just a slightly more aerodynamic look to the back. Sort of like a coupe. It's all clever mind tricks used with all of these different colours to give it a different appearance in shape and size, despite being pretty much exactly the same. So compared to the exterior, the interior hasn't had quite as many tweaks. And if you really like the Renault 5, then possibly that's going to be a good thing, as it feels super familiar in here. They have, however, played around with the interior trims. Renault seem to have a bit of a retro feel going on with the interior of their car, whereas in here it feels slightly more premium, and that's what they were going for, something a bit more simplistic. Nissan don't want their customers to have things which are too loud and out there, so their interiors are a bit more calming. There's 3 different colour choices to choose from. You have the Comfort entry-level trim, which features lots of blacks and greys. It's very simple. This, however, is a bit more interesting. This is the Audacious trim. We've got a mix of leather effects finished in dark blue. You've also got some contrasting white and then just touches of orange. Bits of orange stitching and also this orange fabric in the centre. You have that dark blue also mimicked on the dashboard, which works really well with the different interior lighting options you can get, as this 2-step dashboard just has a little glow underneath that dashboard. It looks quite nice. This is the one you want to go for if you want something which has almost a touch of sportiness. For me personally, it's the chill option that I would want to go for. This features a really light and calming interior. You have almost white seats, white dashboard, but then you just have trims of wood effect. It looks really nice, and I think it suits the Micra. It gives it that little touch over the Renault 5 if you want something a little bit different. But overall, it is very familiar in here. You have the same 10.1-inch screen setup with your touchscreen and also your digital driver's display. Of course, this has been tweaked for Nissan, but all the running gear is very similar. And that also means that you have a Google Assistant, which is really, really handy when using the car. It also works together with a mapping system. So if you set your satellite navigation to take you to a destination which requires a charge, then all internally inside of the car, it will pick the best charger and it will even warm up the battery. So it's at its most efficient temperature for when you get there to start charging. Very clever stuff. There are some positives to me and some negatives that this is based on the R5, because there's things I love about the R5. I do love the steering wheel. You've got those real nice physical buttons which are really easy to navigate and change your settings, and you also have the paddles behind the steering wheel. Now these adjust your regenerative braking. There's actually 4 different levels. You have 3 standard levels and then you have a 1-pedal drive. Nissan are claiming that this is actually able to bring you to a stop. Now, I wouldn't call it 1 pedal, but it is definitely stronger than previous generation models. You also have the drive mode button, which is on the steering wheel, and just like lots of Renault products, you have the volume behind the steering wheel. Now, Renault buyers will be very used to this, but this might be something that Nissan buyers need to get used to. At first, I found it a little bit annoying. It was hard to find where the volume controls are, but once you know where you are, it's brilliant because it kind of declutters this steering wheel and you just have it tucked behind there. But here brings me to the negative. I really wish, like with the Alpine A290, that Nissan had opted to put their driver controls somewhere else other than behind the steering wheel. This is maybe just a niggle to me, but I find this a little bit annoying up here. It feels almost like it's an indicator stalk. I told you it's something very small and possibly something you'll get used to, but I would have loved if they just moved that. There really hasn't been too many tweaks in this car compared to the Renault, and I think that's a little bit of a shame, but you will find one. And that is the introduction of Mount Fuji, just in the centre here. You see, in Tokyo, where Nissan designed this car, it actually is always being overlooked by Mount Fuji. So they really wanted to bring that into the cabin. And that isn't the only place that you'll find it. I'll show you in a moment. But overall, it's a very similar design. Okay, so that's the front. But what about the space in the back? Is that any different? And you've guessed it, it's a very similar story in here. It's almost, in fact, it is an identical setup to the Renault 5. And that means it's not a family car. This is a compact hatch used for exactly that. The interior is fine for smaller children or shorter journeys, but you're not going to be wanting to put two large people back here because this is set up to my driving position. I'm around 5'5", and as you can see, I've got a little bit of knee room left. Headroom, however, is pretty good, especially considering it does have that low stance. So that's almost a positive. What isn't a positive, however, is the amenities in the back. So there isn't any cup holders or anywhere to pop any items. You also haven't got any charging. But it's probably not an issue in a car of this size. And let's face it, compare this to previous generations of Micras. None of those got those things. So I think people who are looking at this car are not going to be too worried. If you want a large family car which is electric, then there is a whole host of SUVs that you could pick from. But what about the boot space?
Yep, you've guessed it. It's a match for the R5, and that means it's packing the same 326 litres with a 60-40 split folding rear bench. The lack of adjustability in the floor means that it can be tricky to load, but space is useful and deep, with a nifty little space in the back underneath the boot floor to squeeze in some cables. Oh, and remember that second Mount Fuji? It's actually hiding in here as you open up the boot.
I've tried not to focus too much about the Renault 5 when talking about the Nissan Micra, the Renault 5, the Renault 5, the Renault 5.
You sure about that?
The Renault 5, R5, the Renault 5.
You sure about that?
Because personally, I think, and Nissan believe, that they will have completely different audiences. And I think that with just a few subtle tweaks on the exterior and a few on the interior, they've done a really good job at doing that. The Renault 5 is a retro hatch, which is a little bit sporty, but this feels a lot softer, a lot friendlier. I really like that winking detail when you start the car, and I love some of the interior stylings, especially the lighter colours. They feel so calming, and calming is exactly what I want from an electric vehicle. Now, whether you choose the Renault or Nissan, that's all personal to you, but what I do know is the wait times for Renault 5s are quite long. So if you want something which has everything that that car has, but just with a little Japanese twist, then this could be a great option. Let me know. What do you think in the comments down below? I really hope you have enjoyed this video. If you have, go ahead and give it a big thumbs up. And if you want to see more first releases, first looks and drives from me on this channel, then make sure you hit the subscribe button. Until next time, guys. See you later.